Hello. It is so nice to see all of you. I'm actually amazed at the turnout, and I'm so happy. And yeah, I'm going to keep this quite short, um, but like you read from the meeting in the invite on Facebook, this has been a long time coming, and we're trying to get this going regularly again. But we're still searching for people to join kind of the organizer team to help us keep this going because, yeah, we need help. So please just talk to some of us after or reach out on Facebook if you're interested. We're already planning the next meetup in January. It's going to be January 3rd, I think, or 5th, something like that. You will see it on Facebook. I have, there is some schedule change, unfortunately. The X State talk was not ready. Like there were some personal situations in the week, and he wanted more work on it, Ragnar. So he will have that talk on the next meetup. But if you came here just for that talk, you can feel free to talk to Ragnar. He's over there, and ask him about X States. But this launch here, this is actually the first big meetup we have here. We've had a couple of smaller ones. This was planned from the beginning to be designed for the community. And so if any of you want to host a community-based meetup about anything at all, you can definitely reach out to us and we will talk, we will help you. So that's, yeah. It took a little time to get this ready. Like some of you know, we are running this operation here called Hop. That's our side project. And currently, still, we are charging all of these vehicles in this area every night. So this area looks a little bit different currently during nights. And if you stay here long enough, you will see them returning to home base. But yeah, that's we're working on getting that out so we can just have this really nice and ready always. But we have 3 great talks tonight. Filling in for Ragnar is Ayer, who's going to start. He was in JSConf Japan just a couple days ago, and there were some very interesting things being presented there. And so, yeah, he's going to tell you what he learned.
Is it the thing now? Yeah, this works. Great. Yeah, just happy to see all of you here. Like Eiki said, I went to Japan last weekend and went to JSConf there. It's kind of the same family of events as we had here in Iceland last year. So I just wanted to go over the interesting things I saw there. Many of them are bleeding edge things that I don't say like go use in your production applications, but it's more like, okay, there might be some nice ideas there worth talking about. What I am most interested in sharing with you is the State of JS survey. So the people that run the State of JS survey every year, which is kind of seeing what frameworks are widely used and what features of the language, and we kind of get this nice summary of just the state of the JavaScript community. And the survey for 2019 is now running, and the results won't be published until after 2 weeks. But I got to see the current status, and there are a few things that I found really interesting there. And yeah, so first off, this is a picture of the slide. I talked to the guy, he was not willing to share the slides with me, and I'll explain. So here is React. So maybe going first over, this is assess, adopt, avoid, and analyze. So you can see React here leading the way in adopt. Vue is kind of trying to reach the same momentum. Preact is over here. Polymer is here in avoid, and hiding behind it is Ember. And then Angular is over here in analyze. So it's pretty obvious that Vue and React are the top framework today. Again, you that have been in this world for a couple of years know that that might change soon. And the fire here under means that more than 50% of the non-users are interested in learning it. That means that even if it's this popular, it still has a lot of people that want to kind of become users as well. And another thing was TypeScript is now over 50% adoption rate. And what I found even more interesting there is that Elm and Reason have stopped their growth, and TypeScript has kind of taken over the growth of Reason and Elm. Even though they're still being used and they're not declining, it's still interesting that seems like people that want types in their JavaScript feel like TypeScript is the better choice. Yeah, this is what I just said. And another interesting statement that he made was that Svelte, like if you look at the history of Svelte and how people are interested in it now, how the current users are happy with it, I think it were 80-something% of Svelte's users are really happy with it, that he could kind of predict the growth curve based on other frameworks that in 2 to 3 years, it's going to be as big as React and Vue. So, I mean, that's really hard to guess, but it's interesting to look at it only from the kind of stats. So, what's Svelte anyway? Just a brief thing that it was not talked about in the conference itself, but I think it has a interesting kind of different take. Sometimes we think about JavaScript as the assembly language of the web. You know, it's the language that runs in the browser, but then now we're starting to write in other languages that either transpile over to JavaScript or even use WebAssembly. But Svelte is like you cannot just include it as a JavaScript file and use it as a JavaScript library. You have to use their CLI tool, which means that they always have this build step transport step, whatever you call it, so they can build, language syntax into the framework, and they can build all kinds of tools to kind of just optimize your web app for you, code splitting for free or whatever you want. And it's interesting, they are the first framework that I know of to make use of JavaScript labels. So if you see the dollar over here, this is a valid JavaScript syntax. The dollar could be any name. This is just to put a label on a line. And in Svelte, that means that if any variable in this line changes, then recompute the whole statement. So for example, here we have a button. When you click on the button, the count is increased. But when it becomes 10, then this message will appear. And there's no wiring needing. It's just saying like, hey, recompute this statement when the variable changes. So I think it's that it's interesting. It's not just following all the frameworks. It's kind of taking a different approach. There's no virtual DOM. There's really minimal runtime library. It kind of tries to do all the heavy lifting at compile time. Another talk at JSConf Japan was about Dino, which is kind of Node, but Dino reversed. And this is the same creator as the creator of Node, Ryan Dahl. And he had a talk at JSConf EU last year, I think, announcing this, where he just talked about mistakes he made when he created Node, what he wanted to do differently. So this is his second attempt at Node, learning from his experience. Yeah. So this is kind of their statement. Dino aims to be productive and secure scripting environment for the modern programmer. So they're even saying you should use this instead of shell scripts or Python scripts or whatever. And what I think it's really interesting to think about is like Node was created in 2009, and a lot has changed since then. Just JavaScript as a language, the web platform, everything. So creating Node again today is just completely different, because you can leverage different things, and the focus is not the same. I'm just gonna run quickly through some of the features and not dive too deep. So it supports TypeScript and WebAssembly built in, and kind of encourages the use of TypeScript. You don't use NPM, so you don't import modules based on names, but you import them based on URLs. If anyone has used Go, it kind of reminds me of that, many things in Dino. And it only supports ES modules. There's no require. I find that quite interesting how the whole ecosystem is now embracing ES modules. It does provide more standard modules. It's trying to just make JavaScript or TypeScript nicer to use out of the box. And as well, it does have some tooling built into the CLI. So Dino is just one single executable file, but it does have tools to run tests for code formatting, bundling, and linting. And kind of, if you think if that would all just come with Node. But it's really focused on security. So you do need to give it explicit access to, when you're accessing your hard disk or files or network access or anything like that. So that's like short on Dino. Next up, I would like to tell you all about the package manager called Pika. And yeah, maybe it does not go well in Iceland, but that's the name. So that's a package manager that you can compare to NPM, but it's only for ES6 modules. And it's kind of meant to be the package manager for the web, for me, it kind of makes me think of Bower, how that tried to be the package manager for web, but I don't know, maybe this will work now with ES modules, because NPM is kind of full of everything, and then this can be more focused. So it also has a CDN, and what's nice now, so ES modules are pretty well supported in Chrome today, or in evergreen browsers. It has like 80-something% support. So soon you can just do this in the browser code. So what they were saying is like, now is the first time since jQuery times where we can write a modern web application and run it in the browser without bundling. And I mean, even though we won't do it, it's still really powerful that we can. So this would import Preact directly into the browser without any bundling. And what they also offer is a CLI tool now called Snowflake. It used to be this name. And this is to take your node modules. So you can take a whole node module and turn it into one JavaScript file that just exports an ES module. So you can basically run this on your existing modern web app, and it would create a folder called web modules and then a single JavaScript file for each dependency. And that means you can import your modules like this and then just run your web app in the browser without any bundler or dev server or anything, just static HTTP server, and it all works. And what's interesting there is now we also have HTTP2 pretty well usable, and that encourages us to not bundle everything together. But I'm not saying not bundle anything, but it's nice to bundle the libraries together, and then we can leverage normal HTTP caching for libraries. So the client will only download your dependencies when the dependencies change, instead of you make this one little change in your application code and then you try downloading whole of React again. But again, they also offer a Babel transform to do this for you, so you can leverage this without any change in your code, application code. Yeah, this is basically what I already talked about. Now you kind of don't need any build step. And what's interesting, they go even further. They also offer a web-based tool for authoring your packages within the browser. So they take Visual Studio Code and make that run in the browser. And there is a short video of it here, if I can play it. No? No, I don't know. Does anyone know how to play videos in Keynote? So anyways, this is on the website. It's just a video of this tool. So you can go in here, create a new package, and you just select if you want to use TypeScript or whatever configuration, the name, and then it is published, and there you're just inside of basically web-based VS Code, where you can write your package and you can link to it directly from their CDN. So you can be writing your application and just importing the module live. So they're kind of trying to take away all of the CLI knowledge needed to build web apps. And this tool then has built in a test runner and a way to publish your packets. And it also publishes it to NPM for you as well, if you want. and then say your package gets a pull request on GitHub, then you can have this bot just put here a edit. So you can basically just click there, and then you just have your whole environment set up. I mean, you could be on an iPad or phone, making fixes, making sure all the tests work, and then just publish. So it's kind of, yeah. This is what I talked about before. You can just import it directly into your web app while you're working on it. The last thing I found interesting was about time in JavaScript. And I guess some of you have used the date object. It was designed in '97 and hasn't changed since. That's like the reason why it's as it is. Months start with 0. And it's interesting tweet from Brendan, creator of JavaScript. He always has the same excuse that JavaScript was written or created in 8 days, and then it just stayed the same for a long time. But it's basically a copy of Java's date, like Java's date was in 95. But Java has already fixed their days since then. It's not 0-based anymore, but JavaScript kind of is stuck with it. And they're saying like, the reason for it was make it look like Java. So that was interesting. However, they are working on a better way of dealing with date and time in JavaScript and time zones and all the things. It's called temporal. It's stage 2. It's under TC39 on GitHub. So I'm not gonna share anything about how you use that API, since that wasn't even in the presentation, but you can go take a look at the proposal. So my main message here is it's hopefully gonna be better soon. And there is a polyfill for this already. Stage 2. I think so. Yeah, it's currently in stage 2. Yeah, so that's just the overview of JS Japan. There were some other talks, but I found those the most interesting ones. So, thank you.
Thank you. Connor, can you start setting up? So while we do that, I want to remind you, those that came late, there is beer in this fridge over here, and there's soda in the bigger fridge in the kitchen. You can use this time to grab a drink. And yeah, we are also looking for more talks. I know that there's a lot of cool things happening in the Icelandic scene. We are so lucky to come into many companies as an agency, and I know there's a lot of cool and innovative things going on. So it's a great forum to share that message and share how it can be anything like this, just what you found cool at the conference. It can be something cool that you're playing around with in the evening. It can be like your experience with a framework or a language at work, or it can be your experience, yeah, like a case study or just anything. So, and it is a good practice to put yourself out there, to organize the slides, the talk, and talk in front of people. It's a good way to yeah, get further. But yeah, everyone grab a drink. So, next up, hailing from Southampton, UK, is Connor Holiday. He is going to talk about Cyprus. Yeah, get up.
Hello. Ooh, I've never used a mic like this before. It's weird. You can see it. Cool. So, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Connor. I work here at Aranya, and today I'm going to be talking to you about testing with Cypress. So, without further ado, let's talk about testing. So, what do we know about testing, first of all? Everyone knows that tests are important, but people ask me why that is, because I'm doing a talk on it. And I say that the main reason I advocate is because they help you catch problems early. That's kind of the only argument I give when people ask why to write tests. Because catching problems early saves you time. And everyone knows that time is money. And it's also time that you could be spent in a hot tub instead, which everyone loves. And then they say one of the big things about testing is what about 100% test coverage? So that's one of the things that gets shared around all the time, that maybe the work that you're doing is not important unless you've hit 100%, or maybe it's not trustworthy. So 100% test coverage is actually only important for things like packages and libraries. For running your application, that doesn't matter at all. The only thing you need for your application is to cover the important parts, which are the main path through your application. So if you're building an app that maybe does something that includes a login system, you want to make sure that the login system is always working, because that's the main part of your app. The rest of it is just detail, and it doesn't matter, and it's probably going to change. So just cover the important parts and make sure that that's always working. So now that we've covered that, let's talk about Cypress. So this is a quote that they've got on their website, which I quite like. Testing has been broken for too long. We figured it was time to fix it. And I think this is quite important, because when you talk about tests, everyone knows that we should write tests, but do we? So they set out with one goal: make testing great again. That's a brand new phrase. It's never been used before. Because testing, it does kind of suck, right? If it was great, everyone would be doing it all the time for all of their projects. But we kind of don't. So there's a couple of reasons why what Cypress is doing to make it so much easier. The big one, the one that's my favorite, is that it's actually framework agnostic, which means that you can use Cypress to test your app no matter what is written in. So it could be written in React, it could be written in Vue, Svelte, PHP, people still use that, Elm, Ruby, or just plain old HTML, which is fine. And Cypress can test all of it, which is super powerful, because it means that now that you've got a test framework which works no matter what your app is built with. So as soon as we switch over from React to Svelte, your test framework's still there, which is the goal, really. One other thing that you never have to change or relearn. It's also really fast, which is nice, because time is money. But Cypress actually focuses on a specific part of testing, and that's end-to-end testing. So end-to-end is under a couple of different names. You might know it also as integration testing or system testing. And what it actually means is that your app is probably made of several different services. It might have an authentication service, it might have an email service, and it makes sure that your app works across everything. It doesn't matter about the parts, it's about the sum, the whole of your app. So what makes Cypress different from the other frameworks? Because it's not the first one that does end-to-end. And there's obviously a lot of features because everyone likes to list all of their features. So we're just going to rip through a couple of the top ones that I've picked out. It has env support for environment variables. It supports TypeScript, which everyone loves. It does Cypress Acts for accessibility testing. It does mocking GraphQL servers. It supports all of your Firebase shenanigans. You can actually keep an eye on the network status during your tests. It comes approved by Docker. Laravel support, for those of you that still do PHP. You can put it right in your pipeline for GitHub integration. All of that perfect continuous integration goodness. And it's got a beautiful interface, which is the most important thing. No, wait, that's the dark mode. Everyone loves dark mode, as you can see by my slides. Yes, cool. So, this talk also comes with a little bit of a demo, so I can show you Cypress, because, I mean, the images I've shown you have been great, but we can do better. Before that, I'm going to tell you my top testing tip, the secret sauce, if you will. So that's the AAA method. So some of you might have heard of this or other methods that are quite similar, and it basically boils down to 3 things that start with A. Step 1 is arrange. This is where you set up your testing environment. You load the correct page or the correct scene. You get all the data that you need to perform your test. Then you act, which is where you perform the action. You fire off that trigger, so you'll be clicking a button, submitting your login form, or maybe you're pressing the escape key to close a dialog window. And after that, you need to assert that it worked, which is obviously, it's making sure that the escape key closed that modal window. Arrange, act, assert. So these are the 3 things that I use to label out my tests. And it makes it nice and easy, keeps them all neat, but obviously you can do whatever you want. So let's write some tests. First of all, I'm going to show you the app that we're going to be testing. So I've put together a dashboard for Hop. It's completely fake. None of that good information that you might be wanting. And it's pretty simple. So all I've really built is a home screen, a dashboard, and access to a couple of vehicles that we might have. So it's not much of an app, but it's definitely the start of an app that we could be testing, because it's got a login, and then it's getting data from a server that we want to make sure is showing. Because if people working on the Hop team want to be checking the status of all the vehicles, we want to make sure that any changes we make to the API or the different services aren't affecting the view of our dashboard system, so that the team always has access to what they need. And then Cypress is on cypress.io, and the web has evolved. Finally, testing has 2. It's strong, I like it. So Cypress actually only runs on everything that works in a browser. So that's kind of your limit for what you can use Cypress for. And it's pretty simple. So you just install it via your favorite package manager, which for the moment is probably npm or yarn. And because this is a talk and you never know about what the internet's going to do, I've already installed it. So if we switch over to VS Code, yes, cool. So in our package.json, we've got Cypress installed already, as you can see down here. And then I've added a single script which just opens Cypress. And when you install Cypress, it also comes bundled with a couple of extra things. So we have a Cypress JSON file, which is just the config. So here I've set the viewport width that I'm testing. So you can set up different variations of this if you want to be testing your app across mobile, tablet, normal desktop, ultra wide desktop, all the really tall ones for those people that like to have it side by side, which always gets me. And then it also comes with a Cypress directory. This is where the magic happens. So there's a couple of things in here. It's all Christmas colored because my VS Code's doing all of its detection. But integration is the test directory. So it comes pre-built with an examples folder, and then I've created 3 just for testing, but we're probably only going to focus on 1 for this talk. And then the examples is actually one of my favorite things because each of these files is a test file written on the Cypress API, which is amazing because it means that you get access to see how the API works with the Cypress setup, which you'll see in a minute. The way that they've made it work is that you can write Cypress tests in any way that you probably already know. So right here, it's written using context and it's using it. So you can also use terms like describe and expect and assert. So you can write it either test-driven development or behavior-driven development, whichever way suits you. And then if we spin up Cypress, we'll be able to run this test file and see how it works. So it pops up this cute little window, yes, which has your project name and link to the docs. Cypress has a dashboard as well, which I'll get to in a minute. And then the main kind of body shows your tests down here. Can I zoom in? Oh. Yes. Let's make it bigger. How's that? Yeah, so we've got a test down the side, and then this runs tab is quite interesting because whenever you run tests on Cypress, if you use the run command, it records it for you and then it saves it in the Cypress dashboard. So this is exciting once you get to having it integrated with your GitHub pipeline, for example. So then you've got tests running based on pull requests, and then if anything fails, you can go to your dashboard, you can see the tests that ran, you have access to all of the tests, and you can kind of step through visually and recreate exactly what happened when that test failed. And then the settings is just the Cypress settings, it's not exciting at all. So if we run the first test, you can kind of see what I mean. It spins up a brand new Chrome window, and on the left are the tests being run. On the right is it performing the actions. So it's quite nice if you compare it to some other stuff like Selenium, which have a history of being quite slow and quite laborious. This was very rapid. It lasted for 17 seconds. And then the magic of Cypress is that you can click into each test and you can see exactly what happened as you scroll through. This might not be the best example, but we'll go with it. So the layout of this is kind of matches how you write your tests. So we've got a before each, which is before each test runs, it will perform this action, in which case it's going to a URL. And then it does a get. So it's getting an element on the DOM. In this case, it's highlighting the email field up here. And then the next, so that's the arrange step where you've set up your URL, you've grabbed the DOM elements that you need, and then you act. So Cypress has a type method, which we can see on this before and after at the bottom, where it types in fake@email.com, and then it's got the assert, where you can see that it passed the test. but it also prints stuff to your browser console, which is cool because this kind of is reminiscent more of the command line based test runners. So you can see exactly the result of each of the steps Cypress takes, even to the point, can I zoom in? Yes, of where it says it's expecting this and it actually got this. So a lot of the stuff is quite familiar. It's just in a new interface. So I wonder, can I zoom? No. Let's actually write a test. So things start to make a bit more sense, hopefully. So what I've got set up, oh, I didn't plan on the text being that small, is 2 tests just on the home screen. Nothing's loaded at all at the moment, just because it's scaffolded out. So if I'm writing a feature, I'll most likely write out a bullet list of what I want to build. And I mean, I normally write that in notes, but the perfect place to do that is straight into your testing. So it looks like that. Super simple, and it ends up, you alright? Are you gonna try and zoom? No. Okay. Oh, that's much better. Who would have willingly chosen 720p? Oh my lord. Okay, let's zoom out. Nice. Cool. So yeah, here's our bullet list of stuff. And if you've ever written tests before, they don't have to be too exciting. So Cypress comes with a couple of global things installed. We're not importing anything in this file. It's kind of like if you've ever used Jest, where it's just there. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to visit a URL, which in this case is going to be localhost 3000. And then, yeah, nice. So it's loaded the URL straight away. Now the test is passing, which means we can go home. But what that actually means is because we haven't asserted anything, we're not expecting any result. It's just done something and that's worked, which means it's passed. Now that might seem a little bit weird, but that's actually really helpful because what that means is if it tries to visit this URL but it fails, then the test fails. So every action that you write, whether it's selecting a DOM element or checking that an image is loaded or making sure that you've hit the right API, if they fail, then the test fails. So you don't have to write tests, checks around everything that you do. You just kind of do it and Cypress will handle that for you. So what we're doing is we're making sure, I like to start by making sure that the app doesn't do something I don't want it to do. Because if you focus on doing the right thing, which would be you fill out the login form and it goes to the dashboard, then that's great. But we haven't protected the app against something that you don't want to do, which in this case, we could make sure that we're maybe not entering a password. We don't want that to pass. So that's what this test is going to be. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the input field for the username. And then we're going to type something in. And then let's grab the button, which is a submit button, and submit the form. So what we've got here is we've done arrange, we've done act, and now we need to assert that what we've done is what we expect, brackets. So in Cypress, you've got a little helper to just get the URL, and we want to make sure that the URL should not equal http://dashboard. Cool. Nope. Yes, that is right. So it's passed because it doesn't equal /dashboard. I was getting confused there. Yeah, so what we can do now is we can step through the test to see how it works. So first of all, we visit the local host. Then we're getting the username box. Then we're typing admin. And then we grab the button and we click it, and it's not dashboard. Sweet. Now what we can do is we can just change that and see what happens if we're expecting it to go through. And it fails. Perfect. So you might have noticed that this, if I rerun it, it actually waits a little while before it fails it. So Cypress also handles maybe the connections being slow, maybe the element hasn't appeared yet. So it gives everything a little bit of leeway, which is nice. Cool, so if we just fix that one, and then we want to make sure that we type in a password and we get through, which is really easy because we've already written what it shouldn't do. So in this case, we just need to make sure that we type in a password. So if we grab the password field and type in my password, which is an old meme, but it checks out. And now it definitely should equal dashboard. Look at that. Magic. I just love watching it do things. Now this is especially exciting because it means that I never have to check that works ever again, which I love. Yeah, so again, you can step through everything. We've already seen that that all works. We've got this beautiful green bar down the side. We can put that in the pipeline. And then we've got video access if it fails. So we know if our authentication service has fallen over, or we know that if people are, if like the button's not rendering, for example. So I can actually show that if we go on here and kill our login button and rerun the tests, then they should all fail because it cannot get that element. So it's still trying to perform the tests. And then we can see straight away that get button does not work, which is nice. And this will show up as a step-by-step video that you can interact with the test run down the side in the dashboard. So everyone's happy because it means that you can go on and check it out. Your project managers can go on and check it out. And it also means that the tests that you've written work sort of like instruction sets. So if someone's new to the project, or maybe you're discussing it with someone, you can show them exactly what the functionality is supposed to do and what things aren't supposed to do, which makes everyone's life so much easier. And that's my introduction to Cypress. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have questions for Connor? Have you tried using this with PHP for the recording?
That noise. No. Yes?
Does the Cypress interface do anything special?
Yes. Oh, yes. So It's got on the right-hand side, it's got access to information on the viewport, yes. But the thing that I like here is this selector playground. So one of the things when you're writing tests is that we had something really easy here where we had quite easy username and password fields. So they're form fields with IDs. You might be testing something that doesn't have IDs or classes. If you're using something like a CSS and JS framework, then things might be a little ugly on the markup. So you can use this selector playground here and it will show you, like here's one of our little SVGs. That is terrible rendering, but it actually says it's an attribute selector, which you can then copy and paste into your test, which is quite useful for writing your test and just getting it all to work without having to go and add maybe data attributes to your items to hook into. So this is one of the things that I like. And then the other one, as you might have just seen, is this actually fully renders your project. So you can still interact with your application in the test runner.
How much time do you spend writing tests versus writing code?
Can you repeat the question?
How much time do I spend writing tests versus writing code? So when you're writing code, what you're doing is you're trying to make features work. Now, if I'm writing tests, then what I'm doing is I'm listing out the features, which would be that really simple sort of bullet list. And then if you write the test will fail because you won't have written the feature yet, unless you're adding tests afterwards. But the idea is that I actually, it's like the idea phase where I'm trying to come up with how to build whatever I should be building. So writing tests is definitely a fraction of the code writing, but it's the same time that I would have spent coming up with how I should build it in the first place. So I'm not actually losing any time, if that makes sense. Hello?
As far as the end file, you have something like a browser version selection.
Yes.
So assuming that you're not able to run different browsers locally, but does this include some sort of a build process? So in the cloud, initiate their own version and give you the results. So like on every poll or on every comment.
Yeah, okay. So to boil that down for the stream, the question was that up here it says that, oh, was it up there? No, it was on the Cypress runner, yes. So it says that you're running in a browser, and if I stop running tests, it's got like a browser dropdown. So you asked if it can include running things in older browsers and other browsers. So it can, but I haven't really played with it that much. And straight off the bat, it gives you Electron, which is still Chrome. So that's not very useful for me. I haven't actually checked. Oh, so it's just the default browser. So what I imagine is that you'd be able to integrate other headless browsers to run with this, which I know Chrome releases a couple of other headless versions and things like that. So you should be able to. You'd have to check the docs for that, I'm afraid. Sorry, I can't be more help. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Cool.
So we'll take another 2-minute break while we connect on the computer. It's just enough time to grab a refill. You can also lean over these tables here and steal some snacks and candy. Okay. Now it's time for the final talk of the night. Please help me welcome Einar Norðfjörð. Take it away.
Hello. There we go. Can hear the echo. That's nice. Okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Einar. I'm going to talk to you today about Nest.js. The reason I wanted to do this talk was I often feel that there's not enough like backend representation in these JavaScript meetups. So I wanted to introduce you to a backend framework that I like quite a lot. So our game plan is going to be we're going to go a bit over what is Nest, and then we're going to talk about a bit of event-driven architecture on the back end, and then we'll end it with a short demo of Nest. So a question of what is Nest is, it's easy to answer. It's a framework that lets you write REST, GraphQL APIs, microservices, and WebSocket APIs, all in JavaScript, which should please this crowd quite a bit. But then again, we also have quite a bit of those already. We have Koa, we have Happy, we have Express, we have Fastify. So the bigger question is, why should you consider using Nest? And the answer I've come up with for that question is that of architecture. Because with Nest, you get this out-of-the-box structure. You get to compose your application from these smaller building blocks. you get to write code that is agnostic of its transport layer, and you write easily testable units. So I have this kind of a bit of a problem with Express and Happy and Co and the like, because they don't solve this crucial problem of architecture. On one hand, that is great because you get to do your own thing. You get to like be cool. You get to write this from scratch, you know, and that's really nice. But on the other hand, it means you can't really transfer your knowledge between Express projects. And I've touched upon many of these, and transferring knowledge from one Express project to the next is actually quite hard because they tend to be written completely differently. And usually there are some mistakes made with architecture because architecture is hard. So Nest was sort of a nice thing for me to discover because it forces you into architecture. And it does some really great things with TypeScript as well. An instance of that would be it uses the reflect metadata API to do dependency injection. So going through those steps, some of you will be thinking, oh, that sounds like heaven, and others will be thinking, you know, this is just Rails all over again. What are you doing? Why are you introducing us to this? And I would say, okay, I see where you're coming from, because Rails, of course, was this thing where you were supposed to be able to transfer your knowledge very easily between projects because it was so opinionated. But I would say Rails was too opinionated. It was too much magic, and I encourage you to do tight coupling and all sorts of things like that. But I would also say to you that Express, Happy, and all those others, they go a bit too far in the other direction. Like there's no structure, there's no way for you to take your knowledge into the next project. And that's sort of the argument I've made with Nest so far. Moving on from that, I want to talk just a bit about dependency injection and why it's a nice thing. First off, for those of you who don't know dependency injection, don't know what it is a pattern that allows you to invert control. That means classes are not in control of how their dependencies are created, or in other words, we want to separate the responsibility of using something from the responsibility of creating it. And what does this allow? It allows us to write classes that are independent of how their dependencies are created. And it also allows us, while testing things, to use different dependencies than what we do when we're running things. So how does that look in Nest? Here's an example. We have this cat service, allows you to manage cats. And you can see on the top there, there's this injectable decorator on top. Now, what does that mean? It means it's injectable. And this service, yeah, so under the hood, injectable actually doesn't do anything. It is a necessary part for Nest to use the reflect metadata API, because TypeScript will only emit this metadata for classes with decorators. So that's why we have this there. Secondly, how would it look when we're using this? We go over to our cat's controller, and you can see that we've annotated that with this controller thing. And in the constructor, we see, yeah, we have this cat service there. We're not instantiating it, we're just saying Nest, please take care of this for me. And then you can see these two other decorators as well there, the post and get decorator. And that's our way to do HTTP in Nest. We add these decorators, and because the controller has this string cats, this means we're talking about /cats. So if I post to /cats, this create method is going to be called. And if I get cats, this find all method is going to be called. Which I think is really nice because this allows us to write code that doesn't really care about the transport layer that much, and it's easier to test it that way. And Nest takes care of instantiating all of this for us. And even, you know, cat service could have a dependency on something else. So when we're setting up this test harness, we don't have to think about that. So dependency injection, pretty nice to have, I would say. So with that out of the way, I want to talk a bit about microservices. And out of the box, Nest gives you transport layers for TCP, gRPC, RabbitMQ, MQTT, Redis, and NATs. But it's also trivial to add other transport layers, and I did so for 0MQ while testing this out. So highly recommend that. But again, to this point of we want to write code that's agnostic of its transport layer. let's take a look at this math service or math controller here. This is what it would look like to write a microservice in Nest. We have this add method on top, it's just adding 2 numbers, and we have this sum method here that reduces an array of numbers into a single number. We're just adding all the numbers together. And then we have this message pattern decorator that says command sum, and this is us saying to Nest, okay, when I receive an event over this stream that matches this pattern, respond with this method. So our controller has no idea whether messages are coming over TCP, whether they're coming over RabbitMQ, MQTT, NATS, or whatnot. It doesn't matter. That we control when we create the service. So this is what it would look like to create a microservice in Nest. We say, Nest, would you please take my module and make it a microservice that listens over RabbitMQ with these options. But you know, later on, like we're technical people, we're gonna think RabbitMQ is pretty old, MQTT is pretty cool. So what happens then? Well, we swap it out. We say, okay, Nest, please instantiate this microservice and use MQTT as the transport. And our code doesn't have to change because we don't care about the transport layer, and this is very important. However, my favorite part of Nest is the CQRS module, and that's a module that's like buried in the docs and not very much talked about. So I want to go a bit over CQRS in Nest.js. You can add it to your project by saying yarn add Nest CQRS, and so CQRS, for those of you who do not know, stands for Command Query Responsibility Segregation. It means we want to have a separate command layer from a query layer, and Nest kind of helps us with this. But why would you want this? Well, that's a good question. Let's take a look at some problem. We have this checkout method. It belongs in some service. What it's doing is it's looking at a user in the basket, it's getting it through some service, and then we're calling checkout on the basket. Simple code, if only all code could be this simple. However, marketing departments exist, and they come in one day and they say, there's this coupon craze going on, and we want to give everyone who shops with us over the age of 21 a coupon for alcohol, because now they can drink. But also, that's not enough. About 10% of these non-alcoholics as of yet shall receive 3 million credits. So how do we do that? As programmers, it's very easy to just go ahead and say, I'll just add an if statement. And fine enough, like it's simple at this point. If the basket has some blah, 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 we have an if statement and it's nested, and all of a sudden our code is smelly and it's messy, and that was easy. Why does our service need to know that emails are a thing? Why does our service need to know about credits and all of these things? I'm going to argue that these concerns belong elsewhere. So what is the remedy? The remedy is factoring your code properly, and that means we want to separate our logic from our services. And the CQRS module actually does provide quite a nice structure for doing this. And that structure is an event-driven architecture. So we want to separate our implementation from our services. We want to declaratively say in our service layer, this is supposed to happen, and then handle it somewhere else. So if we take a look at how that might look in Nest, here's our checkout method, and it's all better now. We have this command bus, and we're executing a checkout basket command. We're done. This is nice. Thank you. No, commands are one part of the puzzle. What is this command? It's a class. There's a lot of classes. We're going to do a lot of classes if we're writing Nest. Sorry about that, but that is a limitation because of the Reflect Metadata API. I look forward to a future where we can do dependency injection using the type system for functions and interfaces. It's just not where we're at yet. So we'll be seeing a lot of classes. But this is a simple class, nothing too much to complain about. Has a user ID and a basket ID. And now we're done. No. We need to handle this command somehow. And how do you handle commands? Well, you make a command handler. And you can see there's a bit of boilerplate here. We're at the top, we're saying, okay, dear Nest, this command handler here is going to handle the checkout basket command. And it's a class and it implements some interface. Great, let's get rid of the boilerplate. Let's look at our code. Here we have an execute method, and what's happening here is we are getting our basket, we're getting our user, and we're telling the basket to check out with the user, and then we're calling this commit method. And that's very similar to what we were doing before, but notice we're not saving anything to the database. But the reason we need this comment there is because something teeny tiny changed in the implementation of this checkout method when we started using the CQRS module. So let's take a look at the checkout method of basket. And in here, we're modifying our local state. We're saying we're checked out, and we were checked out by this user. And then there's this new concept of an event. And we're saying basket checked out event with all of these properties because events are nice. And please notice that we haven't actually written anything to the database yet. And like commands had command handlers, events have event handlers. So if we take a look at how that might look, an event handler. And this event handler is handling the basket checked out event that we just dispatched from our model. Again, a bit of boilerplate, so let's get rid of that. Let's look at the meat. What's happening here? We're getting some properties from the event, and then we're saving things to the database. Great. That was easy. We're done. Except marketing. Forgot about marketing. Tends to happen. We still have those marketing demands, and where do they fit in this? This is where sagas come in. And sagas are a concept that listens to an event and dispatches a command, sort of completing our circle. So an example of that might be something like this. We're listening to events where you will notice probably if you've used RxJS before that under the hood this is all streams. This is RxJS observables. So when we were using the command bus and the event bus and all of those things, they're really just a facade for an RxJS observable. So here we're able to use RxJS operators to make these sagas. So we're piping all of the events that are flowing through the system. We only care about the basket checked out event, and we're filtering. We're saying if the user's age is over 21, then we're going to map it and send a new send coupon command. So RxJS is doing the heavy lifting, and Nest is doing the heavy lifting. We're just sort of declaratively saying what's going to happen. And the credits, we have this new event in our system, coupon sent event, and filtering by math random. And then we're giving some credits through a command. So to summarize, we have our commands that are executed by our command handlers, which in turn dispatch events, which are handled by event handlers. And then we have these sagas on the side listening to all the events and dispatching commands, or this ASCII diagram here, where we have our command handler, events, event handlers, and then this saga is completing the circle. So just want to show you that this works. So I'm gonna swap over to mirror display. So the AirPlay is mirroring lounge, and I will mirror my built-in retina display. Here, what's gonna happen? There we go. Okay, cool. So this is actually the thing. Did I? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Like so. That's good. No. Mirror built-in retina display on the AirPlay lounge. There we go. How's this? Is this better? And then mirror built-in retina display on the TV too. There we go. Right? What the? No, it's both mirroring lounge. This is very strange. If I try it this way around, there we go. Is it? How's this? No. Okay. We will have to be happy with some of this. This is very complicated, Eiríkur. Okay,
We'll make it better. This is fine.
Here we go. Okay, so this is the application we were just talking about. It's factored into commands, events, models, repositories, and sagas. And in the end, we're bringing it all together in this module that tells Nest what's available for the dependency injection, and Nest takes care of setting it all up for us. Sorry. How is this? Better? Okay. And here we have the Nest factory telling it to create the app module, and we're listening on port 3000. These are the comments we were just looking at. Here's the checkout basket. It's all there. So if I start this up using yarn start dev, and let's clear this. Can everybody see my terminal? How's this? How's this? Okay. So we have our basket service up and ready, and I'm just gonna check out the thing using a GET request because this is for demo purposes. So just piping it through JQ, we can see that we're getting, you know, the basket back. Here's the user that it was checked out by, and we're now at negative 12,000 credits. And if I do this often enough, eventually I will get the 3 million credits into the credits thing. There we go. So it all worked. And if we take a look at our logs, we can see, yeah, we sent an email every time. Here's a alcohol coupon. Your coupon is, you know, some number. And then finally, we gave some credits away.
Where are you storing the state? Where are you storing the state?
Locally in memory, because this is for demo purposes. Yes. We can take a look at that. Here's the user. So yes, now I need to go back to the mirroring, and then I can say thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I have a question.
Yes?
So thank you for the talk, by the way. It was really good. When you have these events and you have these sagas, and they are running new commands, do they all run inside the same kind of request timeline? So you're able to, I mean, you're returning the user,
yes.
but did it include all of the changes from all the sagas and all the subcommands?
Yes, that is because when we start and we execute the command on the command bus, Nest will wait for the observable to finish before returning us back. So we're getting actually a promise back from the execute method that waits until all this process is completed.
What if you have a distributed?
So that would be quite different than we would set up, you know, these clients. Nest actually allows you to do a hybrid architecture. It allows you to set up microservice clients within your application while also serving HTTP and connecting to these microservices as, you know, backing services. So it would look maybe a bit different. We can talk to these microservices anywhere we can use promises. We can talk to microservices. So I would just suggest that.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'll probably talk to you later.
Okay, brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for the scheduled talks. The pizzas are ready. We'll find some way to spread them around. Yeah. But yeah, please stay for as long as you like, chat, and yeah, learn from each other. So like I said, the next meetup will be in January. We're already planning it. Please talk to us if you want to help, if you want to talk, anything. Yeah. Thank you so much.